All right, let's plug in, crank up the volume, and dive head first into the raw, loud, and totally rebellious sound of garage rock.
Have you ever just flipped through the radio or scrolled through a playlist and thought, man, everything just sounds so perfect? A little too clean, a little too polished? Well, you're not the first to feel that way. Way back, a whole generation of teenagers felt the exact same thing, and their answer was simple. Plug in and make some noise.
So let's get into it. This whole rebellion didn't start in some fancy studio. Nope, it started in the most normal place you can think of, the family garage. We're going to see how a bit of boredom and a basement accidentally cooked up a whole new sound. So I want you to picture something. It's the mid-1950s. You're a teenager. You live in some quiet suburban town where pretty much nothing happens. School is a total drag. But then you hear it. This new sound on the radio called rock and roll, and it's like a lightning bolt. It's electric. And you and your friends, you know you've got to get a piece of that. And what happens next is just amazing. All over the country, teenagers are basically doing the same thing. They're grabbing whatever cheap guitars and drums they can find and starting bands in their garages and basements. These weren't kids with years of music lessons. Nope, they were self-taught, figuring it out as they went. And it was a direct reaction against all that super polished, perfect-sounding pop music they were hearing everywhere else. They were making something for themselves, something loud, something messy, and something that was 100% theirs.
Okay, so what did this garage-sized rebellion actually sound like? Well, in a word, simple. It was raw, it was loud, and its magic was all about just a few key ingredients. Yeah, let's break down the recipe. First off, the guitars. They weren't clean and pretty. They were fuzzy, aggressive, and just gritty. Then you had the drums just pounding out this simple, heavy beat that you could feel right in your bones. And the vocals? Forget about perfect pitch. The singers were shouting, sometimes even growling, just pouring out pure emotion. This was music you felt deep down, not just something you listened to.
And that awesome fuzzy guitar sound, it actually has a name. Distortion. Or, grit. But here's the cool part. It wasn't some expensive pedal or fancy studio trick. It was literally the sound of a cheap, small amplifier being turned up all the way, pushed to its absolute limit. That overload is what created that incredible, messy, powerful sound that became the heart and soul of garage rock.
Which brings us to the absolute magic number of this whole scene. 3. That's it. 3 chords. You didn't need to be a musical genius. You didn't need years of lessons. If you could learn 3 simple chords on a guitar, you could start a band. Instantly. That was the whole point. It made making music possible for anyone. It was totally democratic, and it was brilliant.
And they took that same get-it-done attitude right into the recording studio, or, whoever's basement had a tape recorder. There was no spending weeks trying to get a perfect take. The whole band would just pile into a room, hit record, and play the song live. One take, that's it. And all the little imperfections, the feedback, the missed notes, the background noise, that wasn't a mistake. That was the sound. It was about capturing that raw, live energy, warts and all.
So let's talk about the gear, the actual tools of the trade. Because what they used, or maybe what they didn't use, was absolutely crucial to the sound.
I mean, just look at the difference here. On one side, you've got the professional studio gear, the expensive stuff, the high-tech, perfectly polished sound you heard on mainstream radio. And on the other side, the GarageBand toolkit. We're talking affordable guitars, tiny amps pushed to their breaking point, and basically whatever you could beg, borrow, or buy for cheap. It wasn't about the price tag, it was all about the passion.
And if we zoom in a little bit, you see some key pieces. They loved guitars with those bright, piercing pickups that could really cut through the noise. Those small amps, as we said, were always cranked up for that natural overdrive. The drum kits were super basic, just the essentials. And for that extra little bit of flavor, that swirling kind of psychedelic vibe, a cheap Vox or Farfisa organ was the secret weapon.
But, okay, gear is one thing. The real soul of garage rock, that was in the songs themselves, what they were writing about and who they were playing for.
So what were they singing about? Well, pretty much their own lives. We're talking school drama, crushes, heartbreak, parents not understanding them, all the frustrations of just being a teenager. And the songs reflected that. They were short, they were direct, they were punchy, usually under 3 minutes, no fluff. Just get in, say what you need to say, and get out.
Yeah, a line like this, it's perfect. The homework's piled high and the weekend's out of sight. I mean, who hasn't felt that? It's so simple and so real, and that's why these songs hit home for so many people. They were just honest.
And you really had to experience this music live.
We're not talking about giant impersonal stadiums. No way. Think packed school gyms, community centers, local clubs. The shows were loud, they were chaotic, they were sweaty. The band was right there in your face, and the energy was just explosive. It felt less like a formal concert and more like a giant wild party where everyone was invited.
Now you'd think this kind of raw, messy music would just stay in the garage, right? A local thing. But every now and then, something incredible happened. One of these songs would just catch fire and break through to the mainstream. Yeah, a few bands struck gold. They created these massive hits, built around these super simple but unforgettable guitar riffs. You know, that short, catchy musical idea that just gets stuck in your head. The classic example, of course, is Louie Louie by the Kingsmen. But you also had the Standells, the Shadows of Night. These guys proved that this raw garage sound could actually climb the pop charts and become huge.
And sure, a lot of them were called one-hit wonders. But you know what? That one hit was a massive victory. It was proof that you didn't need a big record deal or some famous producer to make it. It proved that a few kids with simple gear and a whole lot of energy could create a song that became an anthem for an entire generation.
So why does any of this matter today? I mean, this was like 60 years ago. Well, it matters because the sound, and even more than that, the spirit of garage rock, it never died. Its echo is still bouncing around today.
Seriously, you can trace a direct line from those 1960s garages to some of the biggest scenes in music history. That whole do-it-yourself spirit, that became the blueprint for punk rock in the 70s. That love for raw, distorted sound, that's at the core of 90s grunge. And today, the DNA of garage rock is all over indie rock. It's everywhere once you start listening for it.
And really, this is the biggest idea to take away from all of this. That DIY, that do-it-yourself attitude. It's more than just music. It's a belief. It's the core idea that your passion and your creativity are way more important than having expensive gear or perfect skills. It's about not waiting for permission to make something cool. And that's the legacy, right there. Garage rock proved that anyone, anywhere, could pick up an instrument and make themselves heard. It kind of democratized music. It was a full-on revolution that started not with a plan, but with a bunch of kids who were just bored and wanted to make something that felt real to them.
Which kind of leaves us with one last question, doesn't it? The world has changed. The technology, the instruments, it's all different now. But that creative spark, that need to make something new, that hasn't changed at all. You literally have more tools in your pocket than these bands ever dreamed of. So the real question is, what sound is going to come out of your garage?